thoughts on Greg Kading's success with the book, with the documentary? Now it's going to be a show, Unsolved.
Yeah, the Great Katie's book, Murder Rap, like I just always said, because I believe in law enforcement, and, everybody wanted this bad and paint Greg Kading as a bad officer or a bad investigator and this, but it was like 7 or 8 other people assigned to that case along with him. And so I believe the investigation that those 7 or 8 officers, that task force, determined, they had like a 3 or 4 years to investigate it. I believe the things that they found out during their investigation to be factual.
Can I ask you how did Greg approach you, and how did you first know that they were investigating the case again?
I was approached towards when they started making some arrests. They actually followed me for a year to 2 years without my knowledge, and him and Officer Dupree knocked on my door one morning and said, "Hey, we've been following you for a while. We couldn't get anything on you, and we wanted to talk to you about this investigation that we've been conducting." And I told them to come on in, and we started talking from there.
That they were following you just based off these documentaries that are floating around, or?
No, this was prior. This was like in about 2007, 2008 when all.
Oh, gotcha.
Can you take me back to '96? I know, Death Row and Bad Boy had the whole East Coast versus West Coast, almost like guns were drawn at the Soul Train Awards.
Yeah, we like to make it an East Coast West Coast thing, but it really wasn't. It was just a few people from the West Coast that had problems with a few people on the East Coast. The only negative thing that ever really happened, as far as that you want to call the East Coast West Coast, was that the PDs on the East Coast wouldn't play West Coast music. You come out on the West Coast and they were playing Bad Boys records and East Coast records like crazy. Well, you really went on the West Coast. I'm sorry, on the East Coast, you didn't hear any West Coast music that was being played. So that was the only beat that Fro ever really had with the East Coast. Now, like I said, there were some issues with Tupac, and then later on, Suge took on Tupac battle because that's just how Suge was, because he was being loyal to Tupac with the Bad Boy Entertainment. But there wasn't really no major beef prior to that, other than Suge kind of was disappointed with Puffy when one of the fights, not the fight when Tupac was shot. So the fight prior to that, Suge had asked Puffy to have Biggie come and perform there, and he wanted something like The Door or something like that, and Suge felt that was disrespectful, that he should, just took a fee, and they were bigger than that he shouldn't have been asking him for whatever the amount was for, that he was asking from Suge, for Biggie to come and perform at the club.
You're talking about Club 662?
Yeah. Now, to get back to the question that you asked, as far as the Soul Train, the Music Awards, there were something there that happened, and there were, guns drawn, and unfortunately, the apology resolved, and everybody went out the way. I said there were, guns drawn and an incident, but, luckily nothing major happened. Everybody went on their individual ways, once the security personnel kind of dispersed everyone.
I believe Keefe D and some other Crips were there protecting Bad Boy?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know if Orlando was there?
No, I didn't recognize him. I didn't see him.
Were you, was Suge or Tupac or you, or was anyone familiar with Keefe D before the Vegas incident? When you were at the Soul Train, did you know who he was?
Oh, I knew who he was. So he and I kind of had conversations. He was the one that was managing the weapon, but he never put it up. And I was pointing the gun. I had my gun drawn and pointed towards him, and I was telling him, "No, please, don't raise that gun. Don't raise that gun, because if so, I would have a shooting."
Right.
And then at that point, he just took off and ran to
through the midst of the whole beef, was there ever a point where the two had to make peace or meetings or anything like that?
No, only time that I've known of some representative from Bad Boys coming over or talking to us was that after the Sports Wars, we went to this club called the Tunnel, and Puffy and his crew was there, and at that point, Suge and Puffy had a conversation inside the club, and I'm pretty sure Suge pretty much advised me, hey, I'm about to get Pac out. Pac's signed with me now, and I'm riding with Pac. That's pretty much what I think was told to Puffy. The second time that I know of was a meeting was in Atlanta when one of Puffy's right-hand guys, I forget the guy it was the guy that was always out there accused of somebody threw out that was giving Puffy a blowjob or something like that. That was totally got fired for that or something like that. But anyway, he used to work for Puffy. He came up to the hospital when Big Jake got killed and was like swearing that they had nothing to do with it and Puffy had nothing to do with it. And Suge pretty much told him, get the hell up out of the hospital, we'll deal with y'all later.
Damn.
Those are the only two times that I know of any meetings.
Now, obviously you weren't in the car when this happened, but have you heard Gene Deal's his statements recently about Puffy and I believe Wolf, asking him if there was any problems out in L.A. Yeah, House of Blues, and he was Suge told him that he had no problems with them.
I don't believe that. I pretty much was with Suge anytime there was something like that, and I don't believe that because Puffy and him, especially once the Big Jake shooting that happened,
right,
in L.A. So I don't believe any of that to be true.
I do want to clear this up. Frank Alexander would look like he would be recording you when you would call him, and I guess through these tapes, people like to make it seem like you're threatening him to come to court for Suge's probation violation.
I wouldn't call it threats. I was just saying, come and do your job. This is what we're supposed to be here for. So these guys don't have to get on the stand and testify and stuff like that. Just come and tell the truth. Come and tell what you believe you saw. That's all I was doing. Hey, this is what you were getting paid for. This is what your service provided was for you to come and you be the eyes and you be the ear as a security officer. Come and do your job. I'm not telling you what to say, what not to say. Just come and testify. Stop trying to hide from the subpoena.
He was the only security guard that saw the fight inside the MGM, wasn't he?
Correct. He was the only one that was there. Kevin Hackey was supposed to have gotten there. He tried to say that he had gotten a late arrest and he was late. The Michael Moore bullcrap was always where he talking about he was pulled off because he wasn't going to carry a gun. That's
right.
Bullcrap. That's just him trying to sound tough guy and all of that. No, he was pulled off because he was supposed to be working the club. And Kevin Hackey and Frank were the primary bodyguards. If I would have known that Kevin Hackey didn't show up, then I probably would have sent Michael to work with him sometime that night. But I wasn't really worried about, to be honest, anybody being with them other than Frank that night because everybody was coming to the club. And that's where the security, that's what needed to be secured at. Didn't need it. You would never thought you needed it for the entourage, which, even if he did have their guns on them in the entourage, what could they have done? They wouldn't have done no more than what the homeboys did. They chased down the car and shot at it. I wouldn't expect Michael or Frank to chase down the car and shot at it unless they were alone in the car, but not with the outlaws in it. But where even Frank always trying to say that he was told not to do, he wasn't even at that meeting. That was just for the people that was working the club. Never for the bodyguards not to carry their gun. Never, ever. And then number two, even in his book that he first wrote before he got with R.J. Barnes and them, he always said, I originally had the gun in one car, and my personal vehicle. But then at the last minute, Tupac asked me to drive Kadalia car and drive the Outlaws, and so I jumped right quick and jumped in their car at the last minute, and that's why I left my gun in the car. But now, you know, he's got with Russell and all of them. He done changed his story about 2 or 3 times. And then once he heard about the meeting that we had about the guys not having their, bringing their guns inside the club, he definitely want to jump on that. And now he want to include himself into that scenario, which is
they see
being themselves.
Prime forever. I've been getting paid, full circle war